We're spending $343 million every day in Iraq. We've appropriated $535 billion just for the war in Iraq. Every penny of it's been borrowed. Oil was $27 a barrel before the war in Iraq started. Today it's $86 a barrel. Gas at the pump was $1.76 per gallon before the war in Iraq. Today it's $3.02. Percentage of Army recruits with high school diplomas. And this, I just visited. I was in Iraq on Thanksgiving, Iraq and Kuwait in Thanksgiving, and then I went to Afghanistan just 2 weeks ago over the weekend. and the troops, I'm inspired by them. The weather's hot in Iraq. It's cold in Afghanistan. No matter where you go, these troops are doing well, and they know there's a public policy difference. But they know the Congress and the public supports them, and they appreciate that. But they also expect there to be a policy difference between ourselves in the Congress and the White House, or even divisions in Congress. Before the war began, 4.6% of the Army recruits required a waiver for criminal records. Today it's 11.2%. Now what I worry about, years ago we had so many people in the military that shouldn't have been there. We had to get rid of thousands and thousands of people because of the technology. They say you need a high school graduate. Well, high school graduates dropped from 94 to 79%. When you don't have high school graduates, then you got to spend a lot more time training the people. And retention bonuses went from $157 million to $1 billion. It's an increase of 537%. But the thing that worries me the most is a hardship on the troops and a hardship on the families. Less than 1% of the American people are really making a sacrifice. They say they support the troops, they wear yellow ribbons, they criticize anybody that's against the war, but they're really, like one woman said, I support your position on the war, but I don't want to draft because my son might have to go. Well, I understand that. I mean, everybody looks at all these things personally. I found when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, the war stabilized. In the wintertime, there's a lot less tax in Afghanistan, and I think the fact there's a combination of things that have happened in Iraq. But let me talk about how it affects the district and what I hope to be able to accomplish this next year. First of all, prices have gone up when you talk about construction. PVC, one of my biggest projects over the years has been sewage and water. At one time, John was complaining this morning, John Huggy was complaining about the fact that sewage, the deals we make today cost $50 a month versus it used to be $35, and it was even $15 when we first started this 30 years ago. Because of the price, everything's gone up. But PVC, oil prices have gone up, and there's a lot of oil in oil products in PVC. Steel. Again, this up here has said they can't get scrap steel because China is competing with us for scrap steel. They can't even find it, and that affects the price of their product. I worry that we're spending so much money in Iraq that we're not concentrating on what's going to happen after Iraq. For instance, the military is beginning to say what I've said. General Casey, he's the chairman, chief of staff of the Army, has said the Army's stretched too thin. He realizes they're having to make all kinds of waivers in order to take people in. Joint Chiefs was just before committee that I chair, and he said they're tired, they're worn out. There's no question about the troops are having a difficult time. But they also realize back at home the price of everything's gone up. The price of gasoline affects everything that we do. Sewage and water, we had pretty well taken care of the old district, and now of course we have a new district and we have to work on the new district. Highways. The state said the other day, or their intimations, that they can't finish 219. Well, I've gone through this over and over again. I remember when Governor Schaap was a governor, we reduced Appalachian Regional money for the state, their share of it, from down to 10%, and they couldn't pay for it. Well, that's the same thing I'm getting today on 219 on the one section in Somerset County. We poured $400 million into Route 22. It's going pretty well. We know how important roads are to produce jobs. Sewage and water and roads are probably the two most important things that we do in order to attract jobs. We can't attract jobs without sewage and water. We can attract them without transportation, but it's a lot easier if you have good transportation. Always would like to see see more. Now, you've got the list of things which we see could be funded if you just take 10 hours, all the structurally deficient bridges. Well, that's pretty bad when Pennsylvania has the most structurally deficient bridges in the whole country. And because of the cost of the war, we're not able to take care of that. And of course, the state can't even pay their share. But you look through that list and you'll see what we think needs to be done. Now, let me talk about what I see that we can do this year. One is synthetic fuels. Years ago, we started a synthetic fuel plant in Central City. We had $10 million in it. Carter was the president. Because the price of oil went down from $30 a barrel to $10 a barrel, it fell through. Nobody predicts the price of oil is going to come down to $60 a barrel, and that's the break-even point for synthetic fuels. The thing we have to work out is the CO2 deposits with emissions with CO2. And we're trying to work that out. We think we have a new procedure. Sasol has a big CO2 problem. We think this new procedure may work out, and it's being developed right here in Johnstown. The Air Force alone wants to build 7 synthetic fuel plants throughout the world. We're looking at that. We're seeing if that's feasible. The other thing that I'm looking at is vaccinations. Now that may seem far-fetched because we don't have any immediate threat of bird flu or any of these other diseases. But when you look at World War II, where 50 million people were wiped out because of flu, you realize we're buying all our vaccines from overseas. UPMC has an idea of how we can produce vaccines in the United States. We've talked to a number of drug companies. We're talking to the federal government. They're interested in it. We're hopeful in western Pennsylvania we'll be able to come up with a facility to produce vaccines for the whole United States. Now, you always run into the problem, why can't you get it done? Well, you got to have a customer. You don't have a customer until there's a flu epidemic. If there's a flu epidemic, these other countries that are producing are going to produce it for their own country. They're not going to sell us any. So we know we have a problem. It's just a matter of how we deal with that problem. Diabetes. I said 2 or 3 years ago, and you folks have heard me say this, it's an epidemic in western Pennsylvania. And I have worked hard on trying to make sure we spend money on trying to find a way to prevent diabetes, trying to find a way to maintain diabetes. I put money into the University of Pittsburgh for type 1 diabetes, and we think we're nearing a cure for it. The doctor that's working on it says in 4 or 5 years for type 1, he thinks he'll have a cure. Type 2 is simpler, but it's more complicated. It's simpler because we know you lose weight, you get exercise, you reduce your chance of getting diabetes. But it's not easy to find out why people aren't willing to lose weight. And it costs $10,000 more per patient if you get diabetes per year than a person that doesn't have diabetes. We're looking at overall medical care because our population is older, and we know darn well that because they're older, we're going to have a lot more medical problems with senior citizens over the years. Education. No Child Left Behind. We've been underfunded. We find in talking to teachers that they don't have the extra things that they need, and of course much of this could be funded if we didn't have to spend so much on the war. Now, what's going to happen in the war? I don't think anybody can tell you, except I believe the plans that I've seen, you're going to continue to see a reduction of troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. It may not happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen later. We may even see an increase in the short term in Afghanistan. I'm concerned because the Iraqis have not stepped up to what they said they were going to do, or agreed with the President of the United States are going to do, and then we keep stepping in and doing what they should be doing. Only the Iraqis can handle it in Afghanistan or in Iraq, and only the Afghans can handle it in Afghanistan.